To ABL, Down on the Farm. Our motto is ABP, always be prospecting. We focus on prospect analysis. Get ready to win your Dynasty League.
Hey everybody, welcome to ABL Down on the Farm, episode 57, where we talk all things fantasy baseball prospecting, but especially prospecting in the ABL, a 30-team Dynasty League with 20 spots per team for prospects for a glorious 600 prospects. And tonight I have a jam-packed show because it's the trade deadline in Major League Baseball. It's the trade deadline in ABL. A lot of prospects on the move. And my buddy Dylan is going to rejoin the show. He was on earlier this year. He's always been a friend of the show. We're going to bring him on. We're going to break it all down. And we're also going to talk about his amazing baseball fantasy app that he's created in his own time and money. So without further ado, welcome back to the show, Dylan.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it. Should be a fun one here.
Yeah, definitely. So good to have you back on. We had you on earlier this year, and obviously you've been on the show many times. So great to have you back.
Yeah,
we got a lot to break down. A lot of moves today in your fantasy roster at the Major League level as well. So we'll get to that at the end. So without further ado, we do have a comment from the crowd already. Looking forward to hearing what Red Sox fan thinks about the prospects they've given up. We will definitely be talking about that.
We will be getting into that, yeah.
We'll be getting into that for sure. All right, so let's talk about some of the trades. I thought what might be useful is to actually start with what I thought were two of the most very interesting trades that were done today at the Major League level, principally because of the amount of prospect value conferred in the deals. And the first one was the Cardinals-Brewers trade. Interesting in and of itself because it was interdivision, right? So the Cardinals ship Dustin May and Jojo Romero, not exactly like, Tarek Skubal, over to the Brewers. And in return, they get Alexander Frias and Josiah Ragsdale. I thought this was just a brilliant move by the Cardinals. It's just tremendous value they're getting for two pitchers that are kind of, meh. They're major leaguers that they can have hot streaks. They can be productive contributors, but they're not going to long-term move the needle. Do they put the Brewers over the top? Well, I'm not so sure about that, particularly in the NL with the Dodgers looming. But in return, Alexander Frias, I've covered him a couple times on the podcast this year. He was actually one of my all-stars for the ABL minor league all-stars this year, which was just my last episode. I talked about him. But he's flashing really good hit tool discipline. You can see his walk and strikeout rate is there. His calling card is his power. He's got a 60 power tool, power grade, I should say, 50 hit tool, slow runner. Not a great fielder, but he has a great arm. 60 overall in Baseball America. You can see what he's doing. He's been very, very productive. He's age appropriate for his level. He's actually a little young for the level. He's an A-ball at 18 years old, just over 18. Great frame, 6'2", 177, gives you a lot of optimism about that power grade. He has the potential to be a multi-category contributor and an above-average regular for the Cardinals. The 60 overall grade is a potential all-star grade. So what are your thoughts on Frias? This kid I like a lot. Super excited to see him come into the Cardinals organization. And I am a Cardinals fan, so I had to talk about my Cardinals first. But what are your thoughts about Frias, Dylan?
Yeah, I think when you look at the Brewers farm system, it's just a wealth of riches there for them. And I think you can see a world where they were ready to, or easily able to part with him, given that depth that they have. And I think when you look at the archetype they look for on their MLB roster, I don't know if he fits that mold. I feel like they really enjoy having guys that they can slot in potentially in different areas and are quality fielders and not necessarily needing the bat first. The bat is always important, right? But they've shown a willingness to stick with bats like, Joey Ortiz has struggled mightily for them, and they've continued to trot him out there, right? So I think given the depth in the system, it makes a lot of sense that they were willing to part with him, where Dustin May he's shown glimmers of hope this year. And sure, you have to consider that with what the Brewers are capable of doing with pitchers, that this was their Scooble move, right? Like they were never going to want to give up some of those higher profile guys to get Scooble. So they'll go for the C-list actor in Dustin May and hope they can make him a B+, right?
There you go. I like the analogy.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Frias, important what you said about fielding, right? In the bat, like Frias is not a fielder, right? He profiles as a right fielder, but he might end up over at first base or as a DH. He does have a great arm, according to the scouting report, so that will be some indication he might stay in right. But of course, the Cardinals have a right fielder. His name is George Walker. Frias is a few years away from the majors, so it's a little premature to worry too much about these things. But he is more limited. He's not going to be able to play around the diamond as some of these players are, because he's not a great, all-around athlete. But he does have tremendous upside in the power department, and his hit tool has been very, very encouraging. To complement that power. Not a fast guy, so he's going to be a guy who clogs up the base paths as well, but a really nice, centerpiece for this trade. I did want to talk about Josiah Ragsdale, who's a little bit lesser known prospect. He's a college player, 22. He's actually he's 22 and a half, basically. He's at AA, and which is perfectly fine for a college player to be there. Of course, you'd like to see him get up to AAA pretty soon, maybe by the end of the year, but maybe at the start of next year. You can see his slash line is very impressive, 316, 441, 581, good on, weighted on base average. But you can also see the hit tool and the power tool grade from Baseball America, right? And the run grade is very impressive. He's got a lot of speed, but like, it gives you some pause to get overly excited about Ragsdale. He's in some ways outperforming his grades. He has a 17.5% walk rate, so he's a selective hitter. But when he does choose to swing, he misses a lot. He's got that 25% K rate. So you do get a little worried that when he jumps up to AAA, or as he progresses through AA, that he's going to continue to get exposed. And you can't steal first base.
Right. And it's clear that both of these guys have some warts that the Cardinals know they're going to have to work through, but they're not, I don't think it's anything that's not doable, right? Like clearly Ragsdale's K percentage is a bit inflated there, but it's clear they see someone that can play center field for them potentially in the future, right? So both guys, I think, have some room that they're going to need to learn, but it's clear the Cardinals were going to have no use of May and Romero at this point going forward, right? So you really have to look for the future if you're the Cardinals.
Yep, and the Cardinals also moved Lars Nootbaar today for a pitcher Egan who projects as a 3-4, probably a 4, and a bullpen guy who looks like he has some very nasty strikeout stuff, but he's not a starting pitcher. And the reason I mention that is it may foreshadow the imminent call up of Josh Baez.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that happen in the next day or so, or in the very near term. So we'll get a look at how he does. Cardinals still have some other outfielders they can play every day, but I would not be surprised to see Baez up this week. Which will excite a lot of Cardinals fans. I've talked about Baez on the show, including last week, and his K percentage and how concerning that is. I kind of view him as maybe a Joe Adell profile, which is not a terrible thing. Speaking of Joe Adell, he got traded today.
He's an MLB regular, yeah. I mean,
So if that's the upside, if that's the outcome, it's not terrible. But I think people are very excited about Baez to be more than that. And of course, we'll see. He's a young kid. He's having a tremendous season this year in AAA. So that's the Cardinals trade. I thought it was a very interesting deal. Very happy about it as a Cardinals fan. But, as we pointed out, there are some warts here. And there's some work for the Cardinal organization to make sure that Frias's hit tool continues to develop. And hopefully they find a hit tool for Josiah Ragsdale.
You're right.
You can tap into that speed. So let's talk about the other big trade today, which is the Red Sox acquiring Adley Rutschman. And they gave up a lot of specs, including some highly regarded ones. So I definitely want to get your reaction and just quickly touch on the two biggest specs in the deal, Witherspoon and Azocar. Witherspoon was their 15th overall pick last year, right? So the 2025 draft.
Right.
And, hasn't been amazing, right, at high A ball. He's a little old for the level. You typically want to see a college pitcher at double A, particularly this late into the season. But, I think what's holding him back is that K minus walk percentage. Right. He's really struggled with walks. His strikeouts have been okay, not spectacular. I think, as I recall, he's in the mid 20s in his K rate. And you can see his grades there. And, he's a guy who has a solid but not spectacular pitching frame. And one of the things that stand out to me is his fastball grade of 50. I'm always wary of pitchers who don't have a plus fastball in terms of their ceiling that they're going to reach. Right. You can see he got a 55 overall grade from Baseball America. He projects as a 3.4, but that lack of a commanding fastball could really hold him back, particularly if he doesn't get the control to come around. And you can see his other pitch mixes there. He does have, 3 other pitches, 2 of which are plus. He's got a slider in a curveball, a cutter. That's a 60 grade cutter. So that's one guy they gave up who was a kind of a headliner there. The other guy is Azocar. I highlighted him earlier in the show, early this season, I should say, on the show, as being a really interesting prospect because he projects as an accumulator, guy who's going to play a lot and accumulate a lot of stats because he can kind of like contribute in every category and a little bit here and there, but doesn't project as like a crazy upside dude. And you can see his hit tool grade of a 45 there, 55 power, 50 run, 60 overall for Baseball America. Put his slash line up there. I think the question is his hit tool really going to come around? You can see his kind of like anemic walk rate, 7%, something that stands out. Again, I look for 10% as a baseline. And his strikeout rate, 23.8% at high A ball. Even given his age, he's very age appropriate for that level. It's a little bit discouraging of a K rate at this point in his career. And his hit tool suggests that it could actually balloon upward towards 30% once he gets to double A ball and faces more aggressive and experienced pitchers. But an interesting haul, that the Orioles got for Adley Rutschman. And I wanted to get your impressions because you're a Red Sox fan, Dylan, and we were kibitzing about the trade a little bit on the show before. A lot of folks in the chat room in ABL were really lambasting the Red Sox for this move. And I think there is, some criticism for how many players they gave up out of their farm system. But what are your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, and truthfully, I think the tough thing too is there was another pitcher as well, Anthony Ianson, that they gave up here as well. And him and Witherspoon, I think when you have to consider the trajectory of what it takes to become an MLB starting pitcher, how hard that is. When I look at this package, my first thoughts were, what have we done? Look at how much we've given up. But truthfully, with how bad the Red Sox catching has been from a hitting standpoint this season, I think they were Craig Breslow was looking at this like, this is our chance to get a potentially 3.5 WAR catcher for the cost of who was a first rounder, Witherspoon. Ianson still has a ton of helium. A lot of outlets are pegging him as a top 10 pitching prospect in the game right now. And I think a lot of weight is still being carried by his high A numbers. He had a 43% K minus walk rate at high A. And we saw that come down actually to 19% once he was promoted to double A. So obviously there's going to be a learning curve when you get promoted, right? But I think when you look at those two, the most worrying piece the Red Sox gave up for me, I think, was Endy Azocar. So you spoke at the beginning of the podcast about the app that I had put together just to try and get a feel for certain things, like if we could compile certain StatCast metrics to build skills for players. But I also went and took scouting grades from Baseball America and combined those with some MILB stats to try and backdate based on the past 10 years of prospects against their MILB performance to see if there was a way to sort of correlate some of these grades with their production. And based on Azocar's production this year against his grades, he is actually the first guy in the top 20 that I had listed. So I think Baseball America has him as a 180th ranked prospect, and he ranks inside the top 20 of my rankings. So given that, I think that's the most worrying piece for me that we gave up. But really, the more I've looked at this trade, the more I'm looking at it like Adley is Adley Rushman, right? Like we have to bank on the fact that this is a upper echelon catcher. And sure, he's scuffled with injuries in the past, but and yes, it hurts to trade for a hurt catcher, but we really just have to hope that he can bounce back and prove to be a better hitter than either of Connor Wong or Carlos Narvaez have been. We've gotten 4 home runs this year out of the catching position, and that's just not going to fly if they want to make a playoff run at least.
Yeah, Rushman is one of those players that has been on everybody's radar screen in fantasy baseball for so long, since he was a number 1 overall draft pick. And there's obviously a lot of hype that went into him. And I think it's fair to say that his career has been somewhat disappointing from a fantasy perspective, notwithstanding the fact that I think he is a very fine defensive catcher and adds value to the major league roster in that way in and of itself. He was obviously doing better this year. He has had a lot of trouble staying on the field. And health is a skill. Like another comment from the gallery. Yeah, you should have traded Goodman for this package. Yeah, maybe. Goodman arguably right now is a better catcher, at least from a fantasy perspective, right? But
I think we're seeing in real time though how hard it is to trade for a great catcher, right? Like, I don't think this package would have got Goodman.
Yeah, truthfully. Probably not.
And even though it feels like it could have, I think we were. The Red Sox fan base was overestimating how easy it would be to get Goodman.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it really emphasizes the value of catching at the major league level. And it kind of explains why a lot of catchers stick around for so long who can't hit. Right. I mean, there are guys who just play for 20 years as marginal, lineup guys, but they can catch.
And Austin Hedges still bumping around, right? Yeah. And it's because he's a great catcher, right?
Yeah, and so there's real value in it. Obviously, there's a stark divide between fantasy baseball and the value of these catchers versus real life. I mean, it's valuable if they're actually starting every day just to accumulate stats. But there are very few catchers who can actually produce from a fantasy perspective, like Hunter Goodman has been producing, and as Adley's been producing from time to time in his career, but not on a consistent basis. So, I mean, hopefully you guys are getting, a healthier Adley Rushman going forward. But
I always take pause as well when I see the baseball trade values account put out the tweet where it shows that this was completely lopsided. And I think people latch onto that very quickly. But whenever I see something extremely lopsided like that, you have to realize that there's something these front offices know that we don't know, right? And the same goes for the Skubal trade, right? They, I think, stuck a $100,000 surplus value on River Ryan. And I think unless you're living under a rock, River Ryan is worth more than $100,000 surplus value. Sure, he's 28 years old, but this is a late bloomer. He started pitching later in his career, right? So it's about mileage on the arm, and teams know that he doesn't have the mileage on his arm like that. So once again, when I saw the baseball trade values chart come out and how heavily skewed it was towards the Orioles acquisitions, I just had to think, look, we're acquiring a top tier catcher here, and we need to realize that what we gave up, it's not like any of these guys are, other than Narvaez, obviously, of the prospects, it's not like they're MLB ready prospects.
Yeah, right? No, that's right. That's right. They're years away. And I think, look, Witherspoon has some, doubts about his, ultimate outcome. And we've talked about Azocar, who I like very much. I think Azocar is going to be a valuable player, but I question whether he'll live up to that 60 grade. He could, he could, but whether he's going to be occasional all-star at that level, we'll see. We'll see. Another guy I wanted to touch on though, was Marcelo Mayer, who got shipped out of town. And I was actually really stunned by the return. It was Eric Miller who came back, I think, in that deal.
Mm-hmm. I think they got a prospect too, Carlos Gutierrez. I'm not overly familiar with him.
I didn't see that part of the deal, but that could be. So I just saw the top line, and given the hype behind Marcelo and the hoopla and like what he was supposed to be and what he ended up doing, it's kind of like a disappointing cash out. I mean, they really sold low on him. But what are your takeaways from the trade and kind of like overall view of him, as he leaves Boston?
Yeah. I mean, once again, I think it was a move they felt like they had to make if they're going to make a run here in the playoffs. I think Eric Miller has been a pretty underrated reliever for the most part over the course of the past 2 or 3 years. It's just, like you said, it's a tough pill to swallow, realizing that you're giving up basically on this former first rounder that wasn't able to live up to the potential, whether that was due to injury or just poor play. Really, I think they were realizing, is this the flag plant guy that we're going to hang our hat on? And he's a second baseman at this point that really has struggled to hit lefties. So it unfortunately feels like a guy that needed a change of scenery. But look, even just looking at Carlos Gutierrez's numbers quick, it's not that he's produced fairly well here in high A as a 21-year-old, 9 home runs, 26 bags, 124 WRC plus. Fangraphs only has a 35 plus future value grade on him though. So, I mean, the pedigree isn't there, but it seems like they were able to get a half decent reliever out of it. And a prospect that seems like a bit of a shot in the dark, but I wish Marcelo Meyer the best, but I think his time in Boston was slowing to a halt.
Yeah. So, a couple of reactions to that. I mean, even what you just said, a half decent reliever and a shot in a dark prospect. If I told you a couple of years ago that was going to be the return for a trade guy, you would have like punched me in the face.
Right.
I mean, like, come on. Right. I mean, it is like a shocking turn of like, reversal of fortune, if you will, for this kid. And for the Red Sox, I mean, you mentioned he was a first-round draft pick. So was Witherspoon. Right. We're looking on the screen here, and so was Adley Rutschman. He's the number 1 overall pick. Right. Some guys, sometimes these guys don't work out the way you think they will. There are no guarantees, which is another indication that maybe we overvalue the prospects being bantered about in these trades and are undervaluing the major league return that you're getting. Yeah. But this trade with Mayer, like, I hope it does not turn into the modern day Jeff Bagwell deal.
Yeah,
for them, with the Red Sox famously traded Bagwell for Larry Anderson. Right. The Giants, I'm going to talk about them a little bit more later in the show because of another trade they made, another acquisition they have. But they've acquired a lot of really interesting middle infielders, both in the minors and at the major league level now. We'll see how well Mayer does that. It's not exactly a great hitter's park.
Yeah, if you were to put your fantasy hat on for 2 seconds, I think if you're rostering Marcelo Meyer, I think you're definitely not thrilled about this move. I mean, anytime you're looking at a prospect or even any major leaguer in that ballpark, you cringe a little bit, right? Like, I think at some point I had sent Duke a few trades involving Bo Davidson. I as a guy that I really like, but when I think about the ballpark and what you have to deal with there, and Mayer being a lefty, it's going to be a struggle for him to really tap into any power that he had there.
Yep. No, I agree. And he hasn't flashed much power at all.
Right.
But I thought the writing was on the wall here for Mayer when the Red Sox traded for Meade.
Right.
That it was pretty clear that both he and Christian Campbell, the clock was ticking.
Right.
And so we'll see what ultimately becomes of Campbell. He's still in Boston as far as I know.
And Campbell's the one that got the extension already. So I think it made it even more clear that Mayer's gonna have to go, unfortunately.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about some other topics. These are some other notable prospects on the move to me, and one of them is a new Giant. We'll get to in a hot second. But the first guy I wanted to talk about was Carlos Vielma, who is a diminutive shortstop playing in the DSL. He had been with the White Sox. And he's actually a guy I talked about earlier this season as a DSL prospect of note because of his incredible batting eye. And you can see his walk to strikeout ratio there, which is quite astounding. It's a 2-to-1, walk to strikeout ratio, which is, in today's day and age, pretty incredible. 16 years old. He's a smaller dude. Right now, he doesn't project to hit for a lot of power. And it's kind of interesting that the Rockies went out and got him because I think what we've heard about their change in emphasis in Colorado is to really emphasize the hit tool and in approach and drawing walks, getting on base. And so this guy, in a lot of ways, kind of fits their profile of what they're going after. And the question is, long term, does going to Coors help him become a more interesting fantasy prospect given his remote power potential? But he is a guy that I talked about earlier in the year as somebody to take a flyer on, and I actually have a couple shares of him in a few leagues. He basically would be my 25th man or 30th man, depending on the format. But I just thought it was interesting that the Rockies went out and got him. I don't know if you have any reactions to.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense that you could see this pivot for them to want to focus on more hit tool heavy guys, because we see some guys at the majors for them that have flashed either or, right? Like Cole Carrig, I think has had great bat to ball skills thus far, but then you see the opposite side of the coin. Ezekiel Tovar has really sort of just been, I think, even below league average at this point. And he has some power, but he struggles to tap into it because of the hit tool, really.
Yep.
So you could easily see that they're trying to adjust their approach here. And yeah, looking at Tovar's line for the year at 36 WRC plus, that's just, it's not going to work. Right. That's the lowest I've read. That's the lowest I've read this year. Yeah. So
no, he's been awful. The other thing, I thought was worth noting here is that the Rockies in that deal traded Brenton Doyle over to Chicago, who was he was also having a terrible year, and he's been injured most of the year for the Rockies. But he goes out to Chicago to another not so great hitting park, and the question is, does it now finally open room for Charlie Condon to come up? Do they finally pull the trigger, or Zach Veen? Or both, right? I mean, because the Rockies have basically been slow playing both those prospects all summer, and both have been coming on a lot stronger. Condon is a guy I've talked about a few times. He actually was on my minor league all-star team because of the way he's turned around his career this year in terms of his approach, getting his Ks under to a reasonable level for a power hitter, and increasing his walk rate substantially. But what are your thoughts on those two guys, Condon and Veen, as we approach their presumably imminent promotion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of time at this point. The tough thing is they do have a handful of young guys that I think they're still trying to see what they have in them, in Rumfield and Carrig as well, right? So unfortunately, I feel like it may be a 2027 thing at this rate, barring injury, right? Because even just looking at their entire starting lineup, everyone's under the age of 30, right? So, and they still have a few journeymen like Willie Castro floating around and Jake McCarthy. So I think they'll probably continue to give those guys some run, but at the same time, I could see a light cup of coffee towards September here for either one of them. And has Veen been up this year, or was it spring training that he was playing last year? Gotcha.
Last year he came up, yeah, and he struggled mightily and went back down. He obviously also publicly talked about a substance abuse problem.
Right.
Seems
and he played well in spring training, from what I remember.
Yeah,
right?
He and Condon both the big springs. And so I think Rocky fans are clamoring to have these guys up, but Veen strikes me as a guy who may be up in September when rosters expand. I think Condon has a shot to be up in August before then, but we'll see. Certainly, if there is an injury, you'd see him up pretty quickly because he plays first base and right field at this point.
Yeah, I really think they're just trying to see what they have at this point, right? They still have Edouard Julien floating around, right? And he's, I think, been on 3 different teams at this rate now, maybe it's been 2, but him, Tyler Freeman, right? This is sort of a hodgepodge of players on this Rocky starting lineup. So there shouldn't be any barriers to getting either of those guys into the starting lineup by 2027 at this rate.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They'll both be competing for starting jobs next year. I'm less optimistic about Bean, but I think Codman has a shot to be a solid regular. The other guy I wanted to talk about in this was Joniel Hernandez, who the Giants acquired. Yet another middle infielding prospect that they acquired. And yet another Hernandez they've acquired from the DSL. Hernandez it was an interesting guy for me coming into the draft. I had a conversation with Frank, who is the owner of the ABL Cubs, during the draft, and I was out of picks, and Frank asked me like who I thought he should draft, and I gave him two names, and one was Tatton Gray, and the other was Joniel Hernandez. And so Frank took Hernandez, and I ended up picking up, and I told Frank like I'm going to pick up the other one that you don't draft,
right?
And I picked up Tatton Gray. And Hernandez has been great. You can see his slash line at the DSL. He's just 17 and a half, a little bit under that. 6'1", 180, great frame for a hitter. Room to pack on some muscle. He is only 17 years old. And you can see what, at least to me, what really stands out is his walk to strikeout ratio, which is flat. It's 16, basically 17% across the board. And the reason I mention that is because of his hit tool grade that Baseball America gave him, which was a 40 coming into the year. And thus far, he's exceeding expectations in that regard. And I think the interesting question for him is whether or not he can continue to develop that when he comes stateside at the CPX and then ultimately in A-ball maybe at the end of the year. Because if he can get up to like a 45 or 50 hit tool grade, that power speed combination is really interesting. Right. And I think, the Giants do have a logjam of shortstops at this age bracket. Josar and Leo and now Joniel. And so they're not going to have room for all of them in the middle of the infield. But presumably they'll figure that out. These guys are still very young. They're 19, 18, and 18, 17, and 17. So they have a very bright middle infield future in San Francisco, and they just got Mayer too to play. I guess the placeholder at least for now. So, any thoughts on Hernandez?
Yeah, so I actually took a quick look at that prospect list I was telling you about, and so based on my calculations, where BA has him ranked as I think the 638th prospect within their system. My ranking based on his performance and his grade so far have him up at 230. So clearly there's some probably well-deserved helium there given the walk rate compared to the strikeout rate and really how well he's performed this far. And it's clear that the Giants are trying to do something that they've done in the past. And even though it hasn't worked with some of those elder statesmen that, I mean, their names are escaping me. It's been that long at this rate, but it's clear.
Buster Posey and like those guys you're talking about.
Not even the two Dominican prospects that were huge. I think one of them may have gone to the Yankees at one point. Luis, who was. Both of them are escaping me at this point, but it's clear they really want the athletic up the middle type players. Between Johnny Level and all those guys, like it's clear they're just trying to throw as many darts at the board as they can, right?
Yeah. And as we've talked about on the show, and I talk about in the handbook, these shortstops, they're not necessarily just going to stick at shortstop, right? They're oftentimes the best athletes on the field. They can move to second base. They can move to center field. They can move to third base. Many of them, they have the arm to do it, right? And we see this time and again that there are a lot of paths to playing time and a lot of paths to the majors. So the fact that they just have these three terrific young prospects and Johnny Level, at least we forget Johnny.
Right.
I mean, that could be the entire infield.
Right.
I mean, we could just be a third, second, short, first. Right. Fine. Or they can move one of them to center field. Right.
Yeah.
Really good collection of strong athletes up the middle, all good defenders, all really interesting prospects. I think the Giants are building a really interesting young core coming up, and there's a lot to be excited about in a few years after some more pain and suffering.
Yeah. Marco Luciano, who that was the one I was trying to come up with there on the spot.
Yes.
What could have been.
Yeah, what could have been. He never panned out, but a lot of power and not much else. All right, so let's move on to the next slide because I want to keep things moving. I just wanted to talk about this one ABL trade. All right, which is my ABL trade of the weekend for me. So the Atlanta Braves and the ABL, and that's Aiden's team, traded Anibal Gomez, David Bednar, and a 4th-round pick to Evan, who is like got the best record in the American League right now in the ABL, for Yanier Cano, Tate Southisene, and a 2nd-round pick. Okay. And I just wanted to focus on the prospects for a second, because obviously the major league talent has to do with contracts and, win now for a cheap player in the future in terms of Cano versus Bednar, right? But to me, what was really interesting about this trade was the prospect exchange and the pick exchange, because from my perspective, basically what Aiden got is he moved up 2 rounds in the draft and potentially got the worst prospect. All right. Tate Southisene is a very nice prospect. Okay. Number 1 draft pick of the actual Braves, which may explain why Aiden paid up for him. But if you look at his grades there on the screen, right? He started the season with a 40 hit tool grade, and it's now up to 50 in Baseball America. And his overall grade jumped from a 50 to a 60. All right. And while that is very encouraging, and he has certainly played reasonably well, you can see his consolidated stat line. He was just promoted to AA. Okay. It just literally happened. Those numbers, that slash line, are solid for his age. He's 19 years old, but it's not great. Right. Solid weighted on base average. He has walked, plenty at 15.5%, striking out 22% of the time. Not terrible, right? But when you see that 40 hit tool grade to start the year, and Baseball America is based on half a season, has jumped it up, or 3/4 of a season has jumped up to a 50, right? And he just got to AA. Let's see how the rest of the AA season goes and what happens to that strikeout rate. Because if it jumps up over 25%, I'll bet you a donut that hit grade comes back down to a 45 or maybe even lower, right? We'll see how he does. Tremendous athlete, a lot of speed, a lot of power, really interesting guy. His power grade is still a 50, right? So the question is he going to add enough muscle and get into in-game power? It gets higher. Again, nice prospect, all right? But he's not Anibal Gomez. Right. So Anibal Gomez is in the DSL. He's 17 years old. You can see his grades there. A 70 run grade. Tremendous speed. He's got power already at 55 as a 17-year-old. Good hit tool grade. You can see his walk to strikeout rate there in the DSL. You can take it with a grain of salt because it's DSL, but he's still walking more than he's striking out. And he's got a 621 slugging percentage.
Yeah. He's been one of the best DSL players this year by far.
Yeah. His exit velocity is really, top percentile as a 17-year-old. He's a great fielder. He's got a great arm. His kid profiles as a legitimate starting center fielder in the major leagues and a perennial potential all-star. And so I just wanted to play a clip. I've talked about him a few times this year because I'm really excited about Gomez. So let's just, play a clip that I had earlier in the season about, this is a kid who I think is going to end up being a consensus top 100 prospect, if not by the end of the year, then at some point early next year. In the handbook this year, I already had him 27th on my list with a 9.61 grade. I think the rest of the league, the fantasy industry is going to catch up with that. And this kid is going to be really, really an impressive player. I noted earlier in the year that I thought he was a steal of our first year player draft. The Braves selected him overall at 20 overall. I had him in the top 10 in my fantasy draft coming into the year. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but to me, this was a masterclass trade by Evan. He somehow like got the potential superstar in the trade in Gomez for a good prospect, right? For basically trading a fourth round pick for a second and getting win now pieces.
And got Bednar, who is the current closer on the Yankees, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I saw this trade go down, I reached out to Evan and I said, that was masterclass. I salute you.
I was disappointed because I had a trade from Aiden sitting in my inbox of I believe it was Gomez and Corey Seager for Hagen Smith in my first, and I just couldn't get myself to pull the trigger on it. And then when I saw that trade go through for Evan, I just shook my head. I was disappointed in myself for not pushing harder with a counter because, I mean, and look, the Southisene might be great, right? And I think the tough thing when we look at this from a fantasy lens is when you're buying helium guys like this, yeah, sometimes it works out, but there's a lot of times it can blow up in your face, right? Not that this is the case, but I think it's sort of the opposite with Gomez. Like, I don't know if everyone is fully aware of his skill yet, because I think people discount DSL production to an extent. But I think if you're capable of watching any clips of his swing and what he's done, when you look at him at the plate, you can kind of tell he has it. And it feels a little bit like Atlanta's just sort of buying high on Southisene. And you could make the case for, okay, well, the Royals have, I could have swore, I thought Gomez played up the middle at shortstop, but I actually wasn't aware he was a center fielder. But the Braves have openings everywhere, right? So yeah, I mean, I could see a quicker route to the majors for Southisene. So if you want to look at it like that, then there's definitely some more value there. But I typically want the best player out of the deal, and I think Gomez is that.
Yeah, right? and that's what, from a fantasy perspective, what you just said is what really struck me about this trade, right? It's, typically when you're doing a win now trade, like, you're giving up the future, right? Somehow Evan got a really high profile future guy and like got the win now guys in this trade. So this is just, to me, like, exactly, look, it could work. It could end up being that something goes wrong with Gomez and he ends up being a bust, right? We can only evaluate them on how they're doing right now. And both these players are years from the majors, right? Particularly Gomez. But like, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is like a well-crafted and executed trade. And I don't know what the back and forth and the discussions were, but like, this is great. So hats off to Evan, who's been on the show many times. But I love Gomez. You can see Jason has a note that when he reaches the majors, the Royals will be in a new ballpark, presumably a better hitter's park, maybe. Who knows? Right. We don't know what the dimensions will be. Maybe it'll be worse, but like, we'll see. But yeah, I love this kid. The sky's the limit for him. And I said in that little clip that I played, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a consensus top 100 prospect. I'll go further. Like, there's a chance by the end of next year, this guy's gonna be the number one prospect in baseball.
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, it's I think a no doubt top 25 guy this moment, and the sky's the limit for him. I think.
And so, thinking back to our draft, in the first year player draft, I had the number 9 pick, and I took Jonathan Colomé instead of Gomez, who I love Colomé too. I think he has a huge upside profile, but he's been injured most of the year, right? He's just gotten back to playing in the DSL. He's been out almost all season. And so it's been killing me to see Gomez do so well. And I have Gomez shares, so I didn't get completely, blocked out of getting shares of him. But in the ABL, it's been really killing me because I could have taken him at 9, and I would have. So I was literally choosing between those two players, and then he went 20 overall. And if I had known that Gomez was on the block or available, like, I would have paid up for him. I certainly would have given more than Southisene for him, but. Too late now. And good luck ever getting him from Evan. Oh, Evan will probably trade him at some point. We'll see. In any event, I thought that was kind of the trade of the weekend. Very impressive, and kind of a fun trade too, as Evan builds his little empire. I also wanted to touch on a couple of prospects that I just thought were worth doing a check-in on. One of them was one of your guys, who you recently traded for, and Caminitti. And the other one is Luis Diaz, excuse me, who's a 16-year-old catching prospect for the Orioles. who now have some room at catcher apparently. So he's a long way from the majors. He's a diminutive guy, 5'7", 190 though, so he's very stocky. Because he's so young, he could grow a little bit in height still. It's not off the table, but he's probably going to max out at 5'8", maybe 5'9", but he's 5'7" right now. He's flashing like above average exit velocities at 16 in the DSL. He's very young for the level. You can see his incredibly impressive walk to strikeout ratio there. He's again another guy who's almost doubling his walk to strikeout. It's not quite there yet, but it's a very impressive batting eye that he's shown. Coupled with the exit velocities, you can see the surface stats are very impressive as well. What's interesting to me about Diaz is that he's a kid who's been highlighted on Baseball America numerous times for being like a very interesting and intriguing prospect in the DSL. He's made the DSL All-Star team. He's hitting the ball hard. All the StatCast metrics that we get out of the DSL, to the extent we get any, are very positive. He's a Robo Scout, which is an article that Baseball America publishes. Darling, he's always in there. He's ranked very highly in that. He's also a free agent in the ABL. And I've been
floating out there.
Yeah, I have been waiting for Charlie Condon to get promoted. I had this kid.
Yeah,
and I have shares of Luis Diaz elsewhere. But I cannot believe he's a free agent in the ABL. He's just floating around on the wire. But really impressive kid. I don't think he's fully on people's radar screens yet, as evidenced by the fact that he is a free agent in the ABL. And in the other leagues I'm in, the only reason he's not a free agent because I picked him up. Right? Really like this kid. Super long road ahead of him before he gets to the majors as a catcher. But, it'll be really interesting to see what his grades are in Baseball America.
I think it goes to show, right? I mean, to an extent, catchers get discounted in fantasy, right? And I think by the time a lot of people come around on these players, it's too late, right? Like Franklin Premier is a perfect example of that in the Red Sox system, where I felt like he floated around on the wire for about a month or so in a few leagues I'm in. And before you could get around to realizing it, he's already snatched up. Right?
Yep. A couple of weeks ago, I guess it was a couple months ago, I actually had him as a topic on the show, along with, they have a first baseman, Brito is his last name, who I think is a free agent in ABL still. But I have shares of him as well, who's been putting up very impressive power numbers for the Red Sox. So there are guys out there on the wire. And I've been trying on the show to highlight some of these dudes to see if they get picked up. And so I'm always like, amused when people don't pick them up.
Premier was on the wire till June 12th in ABL.
Yeah. And let me see if Brito's still on the wire. This is.
And what's funny? I believe I dropped Brito at the beginning of the season. Josue Brito. Yep. Let's see when I dropped him. Dropped by the Athletics on July 29, 2025. So it's been since last year I dropped him.
Yeah.
But he was showing some great numbers last year too.
Yeah, no, and he's been putting up good numbers this year. He's still a free agent. I'm not sure, why he's floating around. Another guy I highlighted on the show is Jamon Noel, Baltimore Orioles shortstop, who's still floating around out there. There are some like interesting DSL guys, but I think it goes to the point you were making, Dylan, about how the DSL guys just get no respect. They float around, until like somebody actually puts them on a top 100 list or starts writing about that way, and then people are like, "Oh, who's this guy?" And then they find out he's on my roster. So that's how it works. And let's talk about Caminitti, who you traded for this year. I didn't put his full scouting grade up there. I just put his control up there, his control grade with BA and his overall grade. And I wanted to highlight the control grade versus his K minus walk ratio, which is only 15.7%. He's been walking a lot of guys. He's one of these pitchers that I've really liked. It was a great class that came up a couple years ago with Dasan Hill, Levy Sterling, Caminitti, Ryan Sloan. There were a lot of guys in that class who were prep pitchers who, were really intriguing to me. He's had some injuries, Caminitti, but he's back and kind of finding his way. 19 years old at high A ball, perfectly age appropriate, if not a little young for the level. I wanted to hear from you, what were you thinking in acquiring the lefty? and how are you feeling about him and how he's been performing?
Yeah, so I was never a Caminitti guy prior to this year, and I think it was due to the pitch mix. I knew that the pitches that he had were good, but that it wasn't a wide enough arsenal, I thought, to become an MLB starting pitcher. And as the story goes, right? These guys always are tinkering and adding pitches, right? And I think he's added 3 or 4 pitches this year. And I think that was when I started to pay attention a little closer and definitely threw the blinders on in regards to the walk rate because I realized if I waited for him to figure out that walk rate based on these new pitches that it was going to be too late. So it seemed like the best deal I had available with trying to move Jose Ramirez. And I was sort of playing off the fact that if I am going to make a run in ABL, even that Ramirez coming back from hamate injury may zap the power a little bit. So I wanted to make sure I got some value out of it before any of those effects lingered. And I felt like from what it seemed, it was a smart decision. And you know what? I think Caminitti had a 14K game the other day. So it's clear that even with his age, he's got plenty of room to grow into those pitches and figure it out. And I think the Braves have always shown a willingness to promote guys pretty quickly, and even straight from AA we've seen, right? So he's a step away from there. I think I realized I made the right decision in coming back from my men's league baseball game yesterday to, I think, 5 different offers that all involved Caminitti going out. So everyone must have saw the 14K tweet. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he has tremendous K upside. I think one of the things that has always attracted me to him, I think I only have 1 share of him, as just shook out that way when his draft year came, is that he's in the Braves organization. And they've done a really nice job of bringing pitchers along, developing additional pitches, changing grips, changing like where people stand on the rubber, all those things that can make those slight little adjustments that can really unlock potential. And so, there's a high upside here that may be masked by some learning curve struggles. And so he's interesting to see. I smiled when I saw you acquired him because I think he's an interesting prospect. Another guy who has been on my wish list for some time.
I try to have a few check boxes that I went into my trades over the past 2 months looking at. And on the top of that list was left-handed pitcher. So I went out of my way to try and acquire a few of these guys, and we'll see how it works out. I mean, I went from, I believe I might have had four pitching prospects or so before going into all these trades that I made. And since I've acquired him, Nate Payne, another lefty, Hagen Smith, another lefty. So we'll see. I'm trying to keep that checklist very laser focused.
Yep. No, this is good. So those are the guys I wanted to highlight today. I did want to save a lot of time to talk about your app. So I'm going to turn the stage over to you to talk about this amazing stuff that you've been developing, and you can share your screen and show us the wonders of the world here.
Awesome. Yeah, let me pull this up here. All right, so we'll start on this first page here. Let me know once you can see this here.
Not up just yet. Are you doing the share button?
Yeah, it says it's sharing this tab. Let me try. I'll try again here. Hold on.
Or if you send me the link, I can try to do it.
Here, let's try it this way. I'll try one more time. Share screen. Any luck?
Nope, not yet.
Nothing? Okay, here, I'll shoot you the link for it.
Okay. You can actually send it in the chat. And
yes.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I need a password. You want to send me that too?
Yes, sent it. Yep.
Got it.
Well, you're now the only ABL member with the password, so.
There you go. Try not to abuse the rights.
You'll get it before the release to everyone else.
I'm getting a weird thing here. And why is it doing this? I'm getting Google Chrome bundle would like to record the computer screen time. You know, technical difficulties suck. Hold on a second.
Kevin goes, the password is password, right?
That's right. Password's password. Now we all know. There you go. Can you see that?
Yes, got it. Yep.
Okay, great. You just direct me what you want me to do.
Yeah, so if you want to click on level MLB there, we're actually looking at, you can see there is AAA StatCast data pulled in here.
Yep.
So we can see some of the skills that I built out based on, and if you hover over some of those skills along the top column, it'll outline what those are.
I see.
Right. So, and so you can see some of the guys here, right? Obviously, we have some older guys like Patrick Wisdom that are clearly still doing their thing with a 215 WRC plus at AAA. But even looking at this, right, you can realize why there's a lot to wish on with Spencer Jones, right? So if you click into that there, click into his name.
Oh, you want me to click in his name?
Yeah, so we can see some of his 90th percentile exit velocity, max exit velocity, and this is all based around, you can see the plus or minus average based on AAA averages. Right. So, I mean, all that red is clearly something you want to see in positive. And if you click on the next tab over, pitch mix.
Got it.
Yeah, right there. We can see some of his data according to specific pitches that he's seen. So, and right there, we can see some of the warts, right? So contact percentage is always been a struggle for him, right? And this is what makes it tough to build out some of these skills as well, right? And it's hard to gear how well he's played because when he makes contact with the ball, he destroys it. Yep. Right. So there's always something to wish on with a guy like this. And if you actually want to close his player card, there was an MLB player. So scroll to the top and click MLB for the level. Scroll up a little further.
Sure. All right. Yep. I got you.
Yep. So now we start getting in the weeds with, and there's our guy there at number 6, Esmeralda Valdez, right? So once again, we're seeing some deep red here. And obviously the XBA is a little low. Maybe it's due to a contract rate, and we could see that under pitch mix there.
Yeah, let's go. Love it.
Right. So contact percentage still not ideal, but once again, you see some of the zone slugging rate he has there is just insane on all pitches practically, right? So his slugging on contact is clearly, when this guy gets a hold of the ball, he's making something of it, right?
Yep.
And a few other tabs here we can actually click into. If you click similar, it'll show some, or you were there. So go to Valdez again.
Yep.
And then,
I see it. Yep.
Yeah, so we can actually see some similar players to his based on the year. So raw power, you can see he comps pretty well to Bryce Eldridge, Kyle Stowers, Rafi Devers, Cal Raleigh. I think that's Raleigh 2025, if you note that there, actually, not 2026, right? So You can see batted ball profile as close to Ohtani as it can be, right? So my goal really with this is to be able to provide something to the league and just the general population, and just another way you can observe players and really digest how they've played thus far, um, and just kind of showing that yeah, if guys struggle with contact, it's not great, but there's guys that do struggle with contact that are still able to make the most of that profile. And I think Valdez is really the perfect example of that. And if you actually want to close this, I'll point out a guy that I recently made a move for. If you scroll down to the 20s here, we'll take a look at Owen Casey here. So you can see his overall rank is in the top 25 for how well he's played thus far.
Yep.
And we know the K rate has been a bit high for him. So this was really,
yeah, it's high.
Yeah. Yeah. But as we could see here, when he gets a hold of the ball, he's really doing something with it. So this was my hope in acquiring someone that can hopefully lower that K rate a little bit. And actually there's another tab here, trends, that we can look at.
Okay.
And this was an area that I was looking to see how has he changed throughout his time in the majors. So we can change that window that will look at the past or basically whatever rate stat we choose or calculation based on that point from 50 batted ball events on. So if you click that metric down, you'll see a lot of these. I think one of them may be slugging on contact or
yep.
hard hit launch angle. I mean, for me, looking at this with Casey, everything looked great. I think it really needs to rein in the K rate to make a difference here, right?
Yep.
So even with his 90th percentile exit velocity, you can see at the bottom there, his season average is well above the MLB average, even though it's trailed off a little bit. That dotted line at the top is his average for the season, but then the MLB average is beneath that, right? Yep. So there's an interesting way to see how these guys are changing throughout their season, right? Because and here's another one, right? Hard hit percentage has been trending up in the other direction, right? And then there's another interesting one there. I believe it's hard hit optimal launch angle, something of that sort.
Hard hit launch angle.
Yeah. So another one we can see some pretty interesting growth here. And obviously that green is the optimal launch angle of 10 to 30. So he's been within that whole time and growing. So I think he has the power to be able to have some really good seasons. It's just that K rate's going to have to get reeled in a bit is all. And he's young enough to figure it out.
Yeah, this is really fascinating, Dylan. It must have taken an incredible amount of work to put this together.
Yeah.
So I empathize because the handbook takes me a long time to put together. So if we go back to this screen and we're at the AAA, you obviously have StatCast metrics for that. Can we just on like AA?
Yeah. So I think we'll have to go down to low A actually, because that's the other league that has StatCast data, right? So, and we can see some interesting names here, some guys that are old for the level, but if you actually lower the age up at the top, we can really focus in max age of 50. Yeah, hopefully no 50-year-olds at, you may have to use the scroller on your keyboard to, there you go, yeah, 16, 17.
There you go.
Right, there's Sebastian Dos Santos, Quentin Young, Jojo Parker right at the top there.
Oh, Luis Cova, look at that. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so what we really need from the MLB is StatCast data for all leagues, and then this app would really hit the ground running, right?
Yeah. So what do how are you thinking through, first of all, is there anything else you want me to share on this, or should we?
The last thing I would say is, so then you can see there's a leaderboard right above the level there. If you click on graphs to the right of that, I have a few graphs built out here, and you can see under presets, if you scroll up slightly, there's a few different presets here that we can look at graphs based on certain things. So maybe click contact quality versus discipline. Let's look at that. Right, so if we scroll down, we can see this is basically slugging on contact versus zone minus chase swing, right? So really what we're looking at here, and I think Sorry. Oh, this is still at low A. You could change this to MLB if you'd like to see
Sure.
some of the MLBers here.
Wow.
Right. So we have Valdez up there in the top right corner, right? Where you want him, right? So it can be tough to parse through some of this data when you're looking at such a wide breadth of players. But I like to look at this graph and control based on the age. And you can really see, right, if you scroll that age, or sorry, you have to use balls in play, unfortunately, but you can really just kind of zone in on how well guys have been playing throughout the year.
This is fascinating. This is great. Incredible stuff. And again, like, let's talk about some brass tacks in terms of how you're going to actually, like, weaponize this, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. So one substantive question I want to ask you is how you're thinking about sample size when you're putting this together, and when you think it becomes like a useful tool as we progress throughout the minor league season,
Right.
in particular, and the major league season too, because like obviously the quality of the StatCast data, is much greater by this point in the year than it was in April.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that, and how have you controlled for those issues?
So I did some research into seeing really what that threshold would be based on certain metrics, right? So actually looking at those player cards based on contact rates and slugging on contact, a lot of those rates actually won't show up in that pitch mix if the threshold hasn't been reached. So this app has been a long time coming this season, because when I built it towards the beginning of the season, it really had a bunch of guys that had not hit the threshold. So it was tough to really read through that until we got to the dog days of summer to actually see guys with large enough samples, because as we know, right, sample size can make everything confusing. And I think that's where being able to use that now in August, when we have decent sample sizes for a lot of these guys, you look at that leaderboard of the top 10 MLBers by skill there, and that checks out, right? Yordan Alvarez right at the top, right? So I think seeing it with the guys hitting those actual data points where they have sample sizes that are large enough is what made me feel a bit vindicated in where the app is at, right? Because early in the season, I'm looking at some of the guys, I'm like, I don't know about this, but it was because, there's guys that hit hot streaks in April that haven't done anything since, and they fell far down that skill ladder. So, I think it's just about having the right controls in place so that people aren't looking at the data with fogged lenses.
Yep. That makes sense. And so, going to the topic of how to weaponize it, like what are your plans in terms of rolling this out? It's obviously password protected. I mean, I can now hack the system, but I'll try to behave myself. But and you've kind of like put a teaser out there in the league for this, but you're obviously in many leagues. What are your thoughts on how to give this to the masses?
Truthfully, the way I think of it is this data is out there, right? And I think for most people, if you're interested in it, you can find it. And I think being able to bring it to the broader community of leagues that I'm in, and because sure, I'm in 2 leagues with you, but we could each be in 5 leagues. And if this can benefit you in the other 3 that I'm not in with you, I love that, right? We're all, it's all about the community to me, and being able to build this so that people can use it. I think the tough thing for me is whenever we're sitting there accessing the app, it costs money when people are interacting with the APIs, because that data is all being pulled from MLB's API. And I think you might have seen there's a tab called Power Rankings, which this is something that Cal and Tyler had started in previous years that I've just ran with a bit since they ceased the podcast. And the more people that go through these repetitions of checking the app, it's just, it piles up the cost a bit. So I think the tough thing for me will be finding a sweet spot of like, if people want to use this and they're interested in it, maybe there's got to be a small charge involved with it, because otherwise I'm taking out of my own pocket.
Sure,
For
of course.
it, right? So, but at
We
the
got to
end of the day,
monetize it for you, Dylan. We got to monetize it.
right, right. At the end of the day, I think at least starting out for next year, I think the plan is to just roll it out to some of the leagues that I'm in, just so that not that it will level the playing field. I think the people that aren't interested in it probably won't use it, but if you're interested in it and makes you grow as a fantasy player, then I'm happy. So
yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Listen, I think you should definitely charge for it. I think that's fair.
If Adam's going to keep refreshing it, then I'm going to have to charge him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fascinating stuff. I'm really glad you got a chance to showcase it a little bit here.
Thank you.
Obviously, it reflects a tremendous amount of work on your part.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And still in pulling it together. I mean, you got to write code for this and everything, which is,
yeah, right.
As we've talked about before, I'm a lawyer, right? So like this code stuff is like, it's Martian.
Yeah, right.
Like, the scene in The Matrix when the data is just coming down the code.
Right. That's what it feels like sometimes, right?
Yeah. But good work on your part. Hopefully we'll see it out and you can monetize it as you wish. I think you've got something. I mean, people like Baseball Savant, right? And so like you've got something that is pulling it together a lot of really interesting and relevant data, and it's certainly accessible and you can read it and kind of like, it's easy to interpret, I think, when you're looking at it.
Right. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too is it definitely provides some information that you can find in StatCast, but it also gives information that I don't think you can easily find through StatCast. You probably could if you had, how you can build custom leaderboards and stuff, but I think being able to present how I think or what makes a player valuable from a fantasy standpoint, I think being able to dice up the statistics however you wish, I think is the fun part of it for me, right? So, looking forward to being able to get it into other people's hands.
That's great. Yeah. Well, listen, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Of course,
really appreciate it. I know we were all busy with our family lives and it's middle, the start of the work week. So I really appreciate it and breaking down all those prospects.
Of course.
And thanks for the people who tuned in tonight, and Jason, as always, for your comments from the peanut gallery. And even Kevin tuned in, and tried to guess. Yeah. Tried to guess incorrectly the password.
Are we teasing the handbook here or what?
So, Dylan and I have been working on updating the handbook. I think for an in-season update, there's still some work that I have to sort out on we're down to sorting out how the actual spreadsheet works and relates the data. So I got to figure out a few things before I can preview that, but hopefully sometime soon. Now that the trade deadline's over, it'll make it a little bit easier to sort which players are on which teams. But I'm hoping to have an in-season update a little bit later this month.
Can't wait.
Yeah, but until then, I want to thank everybody for watching the show, whether it was live or it's being watched later on, and hope you enjoyed the content. Until next time, keep prospecting.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Remember to ABP. Always be prospecting.